Yo, what is good, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy Podcast. My name is Tyler Anderson, and I am your host. I am recording this episode on Friday, September 19th. It's about 3 a.m. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm kind of just up late right now, and I thought I'd hit the pod. But obviously, you know, the events of Friday have not unfolded. So, you know, as with any episode, please make sure you monitor the news in the NFL because, you know, injuries and transactions and stuff can always, you know, affect how what I say now might be different later on. So, but in this episode, we are going to be doing a little recap of the Thursday night football game between the Bills and the Dolphins, and then we're going to do a little preview of the rest of the week 3 games, and I'm also going to hit you with my starts of the week. I might do the recap and then do my starts of the week because I don't know, I feel like that might be better. Usually I do those at the end, but I don't know, I feel like those are so fun. I want to put them kind of closer to the beginning, but make sure you guys like and follow and subscribe and all that wherever you are enjoying the podcast. And if you want video, head over to Fantasy Football Prodigy on YouTube so you can see my ugly mug talking. I have this weird ear and jaw thing, so if you see my jaw like doing that, like moving back and forth, that's why. I'm not tweaking too hard. It's just something that has been happening for like a year, so I try to get that checked out. Remind me to make an appointment in the comments. But anyways, we're gonna start by, oh, this is episode 45, by the way. We're 5 away from 50, so that'll be exciting. Recapping the Thursday night game, Buffalo Bills at home against the Miami Dolphins here in week 3, first game of the week. It kind of went as expected. It honestly was a little closer than I thought it would be, but the Bills did get the win 31-21. The Dolphins were honestly always kind of in it up until the very end there, but Josh Allen, 22 of 28 for 213 and 3 touchdowns. You know, last week we saw him not really be needed against the New York Jets. And in this game, you know, they probably could have just run the ball with James Cook all game long, but Josh Allen did get those 3 passing touchdowns. So if you started Josh Allen, and you know, you should be happy with that. For the running back room for the Bills here, James Cook, I made him a start of the week, but I basically only made it as a little clip for, you know, TikTok and YouTube and all that. We're gonna have more starts of the week later on, like I said, but I wanted to get that out before the game, that James Cook was a great start. Obviously, you're probably starting him anyways, but he's really been exceeding my expectations on the season. I traded him away in Dynasty for James Conner and a first-round pick. I'm kind of regretting that at the moment, especially because that first-round pick turned into Caleb Johnson. I got sniped on a few of the guys I wanted more than him. But James Cook was 19 for 108 and a touchdown. On the ground, he also added 3 for 10 through the air on 3 targets, and he's been scoring touchdowns. Like, you know, that was kind of the big worry is, you know, last year he had kind of an outlier touchdown season for what he had been. This year he has scored in every game. Yeah. So there goes that worry. You know, the next closest in carries was Ty Johnson with 3. Well, I guess technically Josh Allen had 4 for 25 on the ground, but in terms of running backs, James Cook had 19 carries and Ty Johnson had 3. So, you know, there was also worries about him splitting work, but, you know, if he's going to be the lead back and get these touchdowns, like, he might be the steal of the draft. In the passing game, Dalton Kincaid had a nice performance, 5 for 66 and a touchdown on 6 targets. Someone actually started him against me. They had Tucker Kraft on the bench, who may or may not play. He's dealing with an injury, but they decided to just go ahead and throw Dalton Kincaid in there, and honestly, that's probably why he had a good game, because he was starting against me. But yeah, he had 6 targets this week, 6 targets last week. You know, he was really hyped up last season, and he was kind of left for dead this season, and I don't think he's going to reach the heights that we were hoping for coming into the previous season, where we thought maybe he'll step into that elite tier. But, you know, he's going to be someone that is in the streaming conversation. And then other than that, like, Khalil Shakir was 4 for 45 and a touchdown on 4 targets. Keon Coleman only 3 for 24 targets, so he had a big week 1. And since then, it's been a little bit quiet. I think he'll have big games ahead of him, but, you know, this team likes to run the ball. They threw the ball 28 times, so nothing crazy. And, you know, Coleman is talented, and when he gets the targets, you know, he can have good games, and he's a good player, but he's going to have some games where, you know, maybe he's not needed as much. And then for the Dolphins, Tua was 22 for 34, 146 yards. So yeah, only 146 yards on 34 attempts. That's not ideal, but he had 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. He also had a 2 for 10 on the ground. Hopefully you weren't starting him. I think I did play against him in a 2 quarterback league, but in a regular league, you shouldn't be starting him at this point, unless it's a really good matchup. Devon Achane was 12 for 62 on the ground. He did his thing through the air that he does, his full PPR thing, where he had 9 targets and he caught 7 of them for 29 yards for a whopping 4.1 yards a catch. It's so weird because his rookie year, his whole thing was like he was so efficient. And like we were like, can he sustain this yards per carry? And now it's like, dude, he's just like a PPR cheat code where like he's really not efficient and he just gets so many targets that, you know, it adds up. I guess on the ground he was, 5.2 a carry, but I'm just saying, like, it's just funny how he's not really, his whole style has kind of changed. Tyreek Hill had 10 targets. It only turned to 5 for 49 and a touchdown. It looked like there was a throw or 2 in there where like maybe Tua missed them or the pressure got to Tua where like the timing was off a little bit. So it could have been bigger, but it was nice to see him get in the end zone. And to me, Tyreek Hill still looks really good. I know he hasn't like been great for fantasy since a couple years ago. And that's probably because I traded for him in my dynasty league right after that huge year. So sorry for that, all you Tyreek Hill managers out there, but I don't know, man. I feel like he still looks like fast and athletic, and I don't know what the deal is with him, but yeah, still someone you're probably starting. And then Jalen Waddle, 5 for 39 and a touchdown, had 6 targets. So, luckily he got the touchdown if you started him. And then Malik Washington, someone to monitor in deep leagues and especially dynasty leagues. He had 5 targets, 3 for 12 through the air. He also had 2 carries for 20 yards. Looks like 14 and 6 yards. But I don't know. He looks very like athletic and like, when Tyreek Hill leaves or if however he gets his opportunity in the future, he is someone that if he gets more of a role on this offense, he might be someone that's kind of interesting for fantasy. So, and then also Ollie Gordon in the running game, backup running back. He had 9 for 38 on the ground. Also had a rushing touchdown. So only 3 fewer carries than Achane, but Achane is still the guy there. So we are going to move on to kind of previewing the rest of the games of the week. I'm going to begin with my starts of the week this time. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So hopefully that's okay with you guys. Instead of just doing the preview of all the games. So we're going to get right into it. I'm going to go position by position and give you my start of the week for each guy. I'm basically highlighting people that I especially like on the week or that I might like more than their typical ADP or how they are perceived in the public. Like obviously, Lamar Jackson versus Detroit. Like I'm not going to make him a start of the week because he's like the number 1 quarterback in fantasy. That's a great matchup. Could be high scoring. Yada, yada, yada. So I don't want to make the calls too obvious. Like even like JSN, I almost made him a start of the week last week and I thought about it this week. And like, I feel like he's entering a tier where it's like, bruh, obviously you're starting him, So anyways, we're going to start with the quarterback position. So quarterback start of the week, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys on the road against the Chicago Bears. He had a rough week 1 in a tough road matchup with the Eagles defense, and then he bounced back in week 2 at home against the Giants. In week 3, he gets a great matchup against the Bears defense that has allowed the 2nd most points to quarterbacks heading into week 3. The Cowboys defense has also been bad. They just made Russell Wilson look like prime Russ, Hall of Famer. I believe he set his career high in passing yards, which is insane for how long he's played and how good his career has been. This means that there is shootout potential here if Caleb Williams and the Bears offense can put up points and force the Cowboys to air it out. Caleb Williams himself is a decent start this week as well, for what it's worth. This game has a 50.5 point over-under, the 2nd highest of the week, so it's expected to be a high-scoring game. In this matchup and game environment, with the weapons he has, I like Dak Prescott as a mid-quarterback 1 in week 3. All right, moving on to the running back position here. Does this lighting look weird? Okay, we're good. Sorry, my lighting was being weird. Running back start of the week, Jordan Mason of the Minnesota Vikings at home versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Jordan Mason has been splitting work with Aaron Jones, but with Jones being recently put on injured reserve, Mason will take over the backfield for the Vikings for at least the next 4 weeks. We've seen Mason be a workhorse before when he took over for an injured CMC in San Francisco last season, and the dude was a monster. JJ McCarthy is going to miss time with his own injury, so there are question marks at quarterback with Carson Wentz taking over for the Vikings, but I had to highlight Mason this week given the fact that he is poised to take over as a true workhorse running back. The Bengals were projected to once again have a bad defense this season, and so far they are proving that true. They have given up the 5th most points to running backs on the season so far. At home, with Joe Burrow out with an injury and with Jake Browning starting at quarterback for the Bengals, I think this game remains close enough to where Jordan Mason will be able to be involved on the ground throughout the game. I'm also interested to see how Mason is used in the passing game in general, and if the Vikings do end up trailing, if he is involved in that capacity, as any involvement in that area makes him even more valuable. Jordan Mason was a decent guy to have on your fantasy team because he offered some value as a part of this committee, but he also had the upside of becoming more valuable if Aaron Jones were to miss time. And now we are seeing that hypothetical situation become a reality where he is going to be the lead back. I like Jordan Mason as a high running back 2 in week 3. And then, like I said, I also talked about James Cook in a separate short form post. So make sure you guys are following, subscribe on the YouTube and the TikTok and all that, and Instagram. I think I have links. I don't know if the TikTok's linked, but YouTube is definitely linked. I should link everything. It's a lot. Yeah, James Cook definitely was a good call there, which maybe was kind of obvious, but Mason's a little bit more nasty of a start, but I think he'll be good. We're going to move on to the wide receiver position here. Wide receiver start of the week, Rome Odunze of the Chicago Bears at home versus the Dallas Cowboys. I talked about liking Dak Prescott as my quarterback start of the week already, but I love this game and I want pieces of it, and I particularly like Rome Odunze on the Bears side. It's a small sample size, but after 2 weeks, Rome Odunze is currently the wide receiver 4 in all of fantasy football. He saw 9 targets in week 1 and 11 targets in week 2, so you love that involvement. In week 2, he turned those 11 targets into 7 catches for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. In that game, the Bears were getting blown out by the Lions and were forced to air it out. But in week 3 against the Cowboys, I think we could see another high-scoring game where the Bears' passing attack is going to have to try to keep up with the Dallas Cowboys offense. The Cowboys' defense has looked bad. They just gave up a ton of points to the Giants, letting quarterback Russell Wilson and wide receivers Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson go absolutely nuclear in the passing game. The Cowboys are giving up the 4th most points to wide receivers on the season. So this is a fantastic offense for the Bears passing. Wait. I'm reading off my notes. I just said, so this is a fantastic offense for the Bears passing game. Sorry. I meant to say matchup. Let me try that again. Also, if you're wondering why this kind of sounds a little more scripted, I have really good notes for this, and I'm going to put these in like a TikTok or whatever. You know how you have to do it nowadays. But after that, we get into, it'll be a little more casual moving forward. But like I was saying, the Cowboys are giving up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. So this is a fantastic matchup for the Bears passing game, especially if both offenses can exploit the other's bad defense and this thing becomes a shootout. This game has the 2nd highest over-under on the week of 50.5 points. So plenty of scoring is being expected here. I want pieces on both teams in this game, and Rome Odunze is the guy I want to highlight this week, as he is looking like he might be in the midst of a real breakout. I like Rome Odunze as a high wide receiver 2 in week 3. All right. We got through those. Now we got the tight end position here. And I got 2 starts the week for you here. I know. Lock in. So we'll go with the first one. Tight end start of the week, Juwan Johnson of the New Orleans Saints on the road against the Seattle Seahawks. Juwan Johnson has flashed at times in the past, but with his involvement in the Saints offense, I think this is the year it sticks and we see him put together the best complete season of his career. We're only 2 weeks in, but Juwan is currently the tight end 3 on the season. Now, tight end production can be fluky, but Juwan Johnson is being used in a way where I'm confident he is going to be involved in this offense for the rest of the season. In week 1, he saw 11 targets and put up 8 receptions for 76 yards. In week 2, he saw 9 targets and put up 5 receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown. He has a 25% target share. He leads the team with 3 red zone targets, and he's being used an insane amount in the slot. I love those metrics and that utilization, and I love the matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. I like Juwan Johnson as a low to mid tight end 1 in week 3. And then, like I said, I got a bonus for you guys. A bonus tight end start of the week. Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys on the road against the Chicago Bears. Have I talked about this game enough? I like Dak Prescott this week, and while his wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, are great starts, tight end Jake Ferguson is also in a position to be a great start for your fantasy team. There hasn't been a lot of buzz for Jake Ferguson in fantasy, but sooner or later, I think a big game is coming for him, and he has a good chance of having that big performance this week against the Bears. He only had 5 receptions for 23 yards on 6 targets in week 1, but Dak looked his way up the seam a couple of times in the end zone, and there were signs of hope for Ferguson's usage even in that tough game against the Eagles. Then in week 2, in a shootout with the New York Giants, Ferguson saw a whopping 12 targets and caught 9 of them for 78 yards. I love that usage, and I love that production where he can put up a good performance without needing a touchdown. This game has the second highest over-under of the week with 50.5 points, and I expect Ferguson to be very involved in the passing game. He's a solid play this week, and if he gets in the end zone, he can put up a really big performance. I like Jake Ferguson as a low to mid tight end 1 in week 3. All right, so those are my starts of the week, ladies and gentlemen. Remember to drop a like, remember to follow, remember to subscribe, and let's get into the matchups. I'm going to try to go quickly through these. The podcasts have been kind of long. I'm going to preview every single game other than the TNF game that we already recapped, but I'm going to try to kind of not rush, but move along here. So Green Bay Packers at the Cleveland Browns. This game has a gross 41.5 point over under. Packers are 8.5 point favorites, and this is all according to the DraftKings Sportsbook. So looking at the quarterback position here, Jordan Love is, he's looked good. I'm a little worried about how much he's going to be needed in this game, just because the Browns are not great and the Packers are heavy favorites, but the Browns run D has looked pretty good here. So Jordan Love is kind of like a higher quarterback 2 play just because he's been good and he might have to throw in this one. And then Joe Flacco is not someone I want to start. He's a fun streamer sometimes, but even at home against the tough Packers defense, I don't want any part of that. Josh Jacobs hasn't been electric for fantasy yet. And he did pop up on the injury report with an ankle. Looks like he was limited on Thursday. Like I said, I'm recording this very early on Friday, so monitor the news there. But if he goes, you're gonna start him. And he's a good player. He hasn't had a big game yet, but he's gotten in the end zone each of the last couple weeks. Only 1 target on the season in week 1, caught it for 4 yards, so that's a little concerning. But you're starting Josh Jacobs as a low running back 1, high running back 2, unless obviously news comes out that he's going to be limited with the injury, or if he doesn't play, don't start him obviously. Quinshon Judkins, the rookie running back for the Browns, he made his season debut last week. He's kind of dealing with some off the field stuff. We don't know if any discipline is going to come down from the league, but he only played 26.4% of the snaps in his first game against Baltimore, but he saw 10 carries and turned it into 61 yards on the ground. He also went 3 for 10 through the air on 3 targets. So, I would prefer not to start him, but if you're in a deep league or you're desperate at running back, he's a I don't know, he's in the running back 3 range, someone you could flex in if you're desperate. You know, I'm not really messing around with any of the other running backs there. Then at wide receiver, Jerry Jeudy is someone who he's been a little disappointing to me. And in this matchup against the Packers, I don't really want to start him. He's seen 8 targets in each of the first 2 games, but yeah, man, I mean, against the Packers, I would try to avoid that if I could, just because their defenses looked really good. And this game could get ugly. Now, the Browns could be trailing with Flacco needing to air it out, but even if they are trailing by a lot, it could be a game where, you know, the Browns just can't even hold on to the ball if, you know, they're throwing picks and turning it over, and the Packers are just holding the ball the whole game. So he's kind of like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 type of play this week for me. And then same thing with Cedric Tillman. I like him even less than Jerry Jeudy. So he's probably riding the bench in most situations for me. And then for the Packers, like in the wide receiver room, it's a little bit gross. You got Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Dontavian Wicks. I'm not really comfortable putting any of those guys out there. The biggest upside guy is probably Matthew Golden. I think he'll have a big game at some point here, and maybe it's this week. With Jaden Reed out with that injury, still no Christian Watson. You know, maybe Golden catches a deep ball here. Romeo Doubs is probably the safest bet, just as a possession receiver here. He's seen 4 and 5 targets the first couple weeks, nothing crazy. So I'm not really looking to start any of those guys. And then Tucker Kraft, he did pop up on the injury report, but if he plays, I think you put him out there, dealing with a knee thing, but it said he's all good to go. They did some testing. It was just a scare. So he's looked awesome. I saw some comps to like how a young George Kittle looked when he first was kind of breaking out. So I don't want to make that comparison yet, but I do see the comp there. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for that game. Moving on to the Colts at the Titans. Daniel Jones is kind of the story of the Colts here. You know, you can start him. I feel like it's going to come crashing down at some point, but you know what? He's been really good for fantasy so far. Where does he rank? He's a quarterback 2 in fantasy, just behind Lamar Jackson. That's insane. Wow, that's actually like that's really funny. But yeah, I mean, you can start him. You can definitely start him. The Titans are a tough matchup for quarterbacks. Looks like they're giving up the 4th fewest points. But I think this could be a game where we see Jonathan Taylor take over in the running game. But I also forgot to say this game has a 43.5 point over under. Colts are 4.5 point road favorites. So yeah, Danny Dimes is kind of in the, I'd say low quarterback 1, high quarterback 2 range. He's kind of similar to Jordan Love. I'd probably rather go. That's a tough one. I'd probably rather go. I mean, that's a coin flip. I think Jordan Love is a little safer. I think he's going to have to throw it a little bit just because the Browns' run D is good. And I could see Jonathan Taylor just taking over the game for the Colts. But Danny Dimes is also a decent start there. Not starting Cam Ward, the rookie quarterback for the Titans. Just keep monitoring that situation. Maybe he'll become a streamer at some point. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor at running back, he's a must start. He's looked awesome. And then Tony Pollard for the Titans. Actually, he hasn't had a big game yet, but he's being used a ton with Tajay Spears starting the season on injured reserve. And I'm not forcing him in the lineup, but don't bench him for like a complete scrub. The Colts are middle of the pack against running backs, but he's seeing all the work in that backfield. And if he falls in the end zone, you know, you're going to be happy you started him. So he's a running back 2, and he's seeing a ton of usage there. And then in the receiving game, I'm not looking to start Calvin Ridley or any of these Titans pass catchers. Like, you can start Ridley. I'm not looking to start Aya Manor. Ridley you can put out there in the flex if you have injuries or you don't have a deep roster. But, you know, the Titans passing game just hasn't really looked good. And then on the other side of the game, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs at wide receiver. You can, you know, Pittman, it was a tough matchup against the Broncos last week, but I think you can go back to Pittman this week against the Titans. Where do they rank in terms of points given up here? I think they're a pretty good matchup. Yeah, the Titans are giving up the 8th most points to wide receivers on the season. So I would start Pittman over Downs. I'm not looking to start Josh Downs at this point until he shows me something. But the main pass catcher you want in this game, in my opinion, is Tyler Warren at tight end. He's pretty much a must start at this point. He's a high tight end 1. And I'm not starting Chigakonkwo yet, but I'm monitoring him to see if he becomes an interesting guy to start at some point. And then moving on, we got the Cincinnati Bengals on the road against my Minnesota Vikings. You know, a couple weeks ago, this game looked awesome, but both quarterbacks are out. Joe Burrow, turf toe, going to miss most of the season. And then JJ McCarthy's going to miss a few weeks here, it looks like, or at least a couple weeks. So Carson Wentz is starting for the Vikings. Jake Browning is starting for the Bengals. This game has a 42.5 point over-under, and the Vikings are 3-point home favorites. I'm not looking to start either of these quarterbacks, obviously, but you know, if you're in a 2-quarterback league and you're desperate, I would lean Browning over Wentz. And you know, Browning is actually probably one of the better backups in the league. And I think he's going to be someone that might become a streaming candidate at some point here. So I'm not starting him this week, except if you're desperate in a 2-quarterback league, but definitely pick him up in those 2-quarterback leagues and dynasty leagues. And he's someone that I think we're going to be recommending at certain points in certain matchups moving forward. But, you know, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins definitely take a hit losing Joe Burrow. I'm still starting Jamar Chase as a must-start option just because he's so good. And I think, you know, Jake Browning is going to hyper-target him. And we've seen Chase Brown be good with him before. And they both have Brown in their name. Wait. I was... I was talking about Jamar Chase, and then I started saying Chase Brown, like Jamar Chase Brown. And then I made the Brown comp, but I'm not even talking about the receiver that I want to talk about anymore. But Jamar Chase has been good with Jake Browning, and I think there is still potential there. I'm a little more worried about T. Higgins. He's still, you know, a wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3, flex type of guy. But it's a little more risky, and he wasn't even that great with Burrow so far in the season. So, you know, I just traded him away in a league. I traded T. Higgins and James Conner away for Josh Jacobs. And I'm happy with that trade. I think, you know, I think it's pretty fair, but the other team needed some depth, and I'm a little worried about T. Higgins, but Justin Jefferson at wide receiver for the Vikings. I mean, you're starting him, but with Carson Wentz there, it's going to be interesting to see how that looks. You know, Carson Wentz is not the best quarterback, but you know, he's a veteran, and if he hyper targets Justin Jefferson, maybe it'll work out, but you got to start Jefferson. I'm not starting any tight end. I mean, TJ Hawkinson, if he's your only option, you can start him, but you know, I'd start Jake Ferguson and Juwan Johnson over him, like I said in my start of the week section. And then Jordan Mason, I like a lot. He was my start of the week at running back. I like him as like a nice, solid running back 2, and if he gets a lot of passing game work, that's going to be huge. The team did sign Cam Akers, who's going to be a little involved, but you know, I think Jordan Mason is going to be the bell cow here. And then Chase Brown, you know, like all the other Bengals, he takes a hit without Burrow being there, and he hasn't been the most efficient so far on the season, but you still start him, I think, this week as a like high running back 2 type of guy, and you hope he gets in the end zone. And then moving on to the next game, Pittsburgh Steelers on the road against the Patriots. You start Drake May, unless you have a locked-in quarterback 1, but I think Drake May is a solid, like, low quarterback 1. He's looked pretty decent for fantasy so far this season. Rodgers, you know, week 1 was fun, but I'm not looking to throw him out there. And then at running back, Jaylen Warren is a really good start this week. I know they drafted Caleb Johnson in the 3rd round with their 2nd draft pick that they had, but it's been the Jaylen Warren show. Caleb Johnson hasn't been involved at all. It's been Kenneth Gainwell that's kind of been the running back 2 there, but Jaylen Warren he's been decent. Like, he had week 1, 11 for 37 on the ground, 2 for 22 through the air, and a receiving touchdown. And then last week, 14 for 48 on the ground, 4 for 86 through the air on 4 targets. So he's definitely like someone that you can start as a running back 2. And then Ramondre Stevenson, He had a really good week last week. Obviously, Travion Henderson is still there, the rookie, but it looks like Stevenson is the guy. I think Henderson will start to split more as the season goes along, but the Steelers' run defense has actually been really bad for fantasy and just in general. Like, they're giving up a ton of points, and you would think the Steelers would have a good defense, but they're giving up the 6th most points to running backs in fantasy. And what's interesting about that is I heard this thing where it seems like the Steelers are giving up a lot of points to kind of speedster running backs versus the plotters. Like against the Jets, Breece Hall is the one who went off. Whereas, you know, they kind of contained Braylon Allen more on the ground. And then the following week, let me see here. Yeah, it was Kenneth Walker, who profiles as more of like an athletic, speedy, explosive running back. He's the one who went off. Whereas Zach Charbonnet, the plotter of the Seahawks, was really shut down. Only 15 carries for 10 yards. So, you know, I probably wouldn't start Travion Henderson at this point, but don't drop him. If he's out there, pick him up. And it wouldn't surprise me if this is a week where we see him maybe make some big plays, and you can maybe put him in like a DFS lineup or something. But you can still start Stevenson as like probably like a low running back 2, high running back 3 type of guy. But don't be surprised if he disappoints. And I think I think Henderson is someone you can start if you really don't have a good option, but more someone I want to monitor to see how he looks. And then DK Metcalf at wide receiver for the Steelers, he has been honestly a little bit disappointing. You know, the Patriots are giving up the 3rd most points to wide receivers. So you can start DK Metcalf. A big thing here is going to be if cornerback Christian Gonzalez plays for the Patriots. I can't remember. Let me check his report here. So it looks like he returned to practice. Can I get some more info here? Limited on Thursday with a hamstring. So if he plays, that really hurts Metcalf and how much I like him, but you can start him either way. But yeah, if Gonzalez plays, it's kind of more of a shaky start, but you know, he's in that wide receiver 2 range. You like him a little bit more as like a high wide receiver 2 if Gonzalez is out, and he drops down to probably like a lower wide receiver 2 if Gonzalez is in. Maybe even lower, honestly. I'm not really looking to start Calvin Austin. Stephon Diggs, like I have him in like a guillotine league, so I might play him because he's probably going to get, you know, a handful of targets, but I'm not really looking to start any Patriots pass catcher. You just don't really know who's going to be involved, and Diggs is probably going to be the target leader, but he's not really getting valuable targets. So, you know, you can start Hunter Henry at tight end for the Patriots. That's probably the best pass catcher that you would want in terms of like their position. But even then, like, you know, he's probably like a mid to high tight end 2. And then for the Steelers, Jonnu Smith is there. Not looking to start him, but, you know, Arthur Smith is there. And, you know, Jonnu's been pretty involved. So maybe, you know, 6 and 4 targets. I guess not super involved, but, you know, with Pat Freiermuth there, it's a little tough. Kayshon Boutte is probably a little more upside in that receiving room for the Patriots, but I don't really want to start him. I want to hold on to him just to see how things work out, because week 1 looked good. He flashed last year, but then last week, only 1 target. Did catch it for a touchdown, but, and, you know, receivers have those games. Like, even the best receivers, you know, they're inconsistent. So, you know, he still might be the guy to have there on your team, but just monitor that situation. And then moving on to the LA Rams at the Philadelphia Eagles. This game has a 44.5 point over-under. Eagles are 3.5 point home favorites. So Jalen Hurts at quarterback for the Eagles. You know, you're starting him, but the Rams are giving up the least points to quarterbacks in fantasy. The Eagles don't really throw the ball, so you're kind of hoping that Hurts runs a decent amount. You know, you're not looking to start Stafford just because, you know, he's not really the greatest start in general, and it's on the road against the Eagles. I do like his pass catchers, though. Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams are must starts. even in a, a tough matchup. Those are both wide receiver ones that you start. And then the passing game for the Eagles, man, like that's where it's really gross. The Rams have a good defense. AJ Brown has been hugely disappointing. 1 for 8 in week 1, 5 for 27 in week 2. He had 8 targets compared to 1 in week 2 compared to week 1, but I'm still probably starting him, but I'd play Odunze over him. Like I made him a start of the week. Both the Rams guys, I'd still start Drake London and Brian Thomas over AJ Brown. I'd probably start Tet McMillan over AJ Brown, but that's where it gets kind of close. So, and then Devontae Smith. I mean, I'm not must benching him, but he's a wide receiver 3 at this point. I mean, I'd start like Jacoby Myers over him and Deebo Samuel. So that's kind of where we're at with Devontae Smith. 3 for 16 and 4 for 53 through the first couple weeks. So on the ground, Saquon Barkley is an auto start. And then Kyren Williams, someone you're probably starting, but you know what? Like if you have if you drafted James Cook, you probably started him over Kyren Williams. Like I think Javonte Williams is someone you could start over Kyren Williams. Jordan Mason, you could probably start over Kyren Williams. Like, Kyren Williams is probably going to get a touchdown. It's a type of thing where if he gets the touchdown, he's going to have a decent game. But if he doesn't get it, he's probably not going to do too much of other things to be a real difference maker for fantasy. I'm really dehydrated right now, but sorry about that. Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker. Those are guys that even then, like you could consider them over Kyren. I think Kyren is he's a safer bet, but I don't really see him having a huge game against the Eagles. Like he's probably a really good bet for a rushing touchdown, but and that's huge, but I don't know what his upside is in this game. Moving on, we got the Jets, New York Jets at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs are 7-point home favorites. This game has a 43.5 point over under. Justin Fields is out, so Tyrod Taylor is going to start for the Jets at quarterback, and then Baker Mayfield is starting at quarterback. So I'm starting Baker. He's just awesome. He's so fun to watch, and I have him in a league, in a 2-quarterback league, and he's a lot of fun to watch. The Jets are giving up the 11th most points to quarterbacks. I know Aaron Rodgers had that 4-touchdown game, and then Josh, in week 1, and then in week 2, Josh Allen didn't do much, but he wasn't really needed to do much. So, they have Sauce Gardner. I think the expectation is the Jets have at least a decent defense here, but I'm still probably starting Baker Mayfield as a quarterback 1. He's kind of similar to like Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams. He's kind of in that range of like mid to low quarterback 1. Bucky Irving, you smash start him. He's a great play each and every week. The Jets are giving up the 9th most points to running backs for what it's worth. Breece Hall, you're not starting Tyrod Taylor, by the way. I didn't say that, but don't start Tyrod unless you're desperate in a super flex. Breece Hall, I think you start him, but the Bucs have a good run defense. Like this has been a thing for years where like they have just been a tough matchup for running backs. So you're going to need him to either break off a big run or be very involved in the passing game. And if he does have a bad game here, it wouldn't be a bad time to maybe buy low on Breece Hall after this week if he does have a bad performance, because week 1 he looked great, 19 for 107 on the ground and 2 for 38 through the air. Then last week only 10 for 29 on the ground, 2 for 9 through the air, but the game was like over before it started, and there's going to be situations like that. But they were playing the Buffalo Bills, arguably the best team in the league, and I think he's so clearly the main back there, and he actually looks pretty good this year compared to like last year where it looked like he was maybe missing something. So Breece Hall could be a buy low after this week, but you can still start him as like a low running back 2, mid running back 2. And I didn't mention him, but Rachaad White, I know he had a decent game last week as the backup for the Bucs. I'm not looking to start him, but if you're really desperate, he's like a running back 3 or 4. So if you're in a deep league, And then at wide receiver, you got Garrett Wilson. Even with Justin Fields out, I'm still okay starting Garrett Wilson, especially because I don't think the Jets are going to be able to run the ball really well. So they might have to, throw it more than they probably want to. And I think Garrett Wilson is going to, be the guy to throw it to. The Bucs are giving up the the fifth fewest points to receivers on the season for what it's worth. But Garrett Wilson isn't a must start, but he's still a wide receiver 2, in my opinion. I'd probably go Odunze over him, but I would probably start Garrett Wilson over AJ Brown. That's kind of, I don't know. Those are both kind of, they have their pros and cons, but, that's the only pass catcher you're starting for the Jets. So it's basically Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, log out for them. And then for the Bucs, you got Baker, Bucky Irving, Mike Evans. I think you can start. He's going to see Sauce Gardner, but Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver for the Bucs. Godwin is not going to play, so you can start either of those guys. Mike Evans as a wide receiver 2, and then Egbuka as a slightly less desirable wide receiver 2, but he's looked pretty good, but a lot of his production has been touchdowns, but it could be the case again. Moving on, we got the Las Vegas Raiders at the Washington Commanders. So it's a 44.5 point over under. The Commanders are 3.5 point favorites right now, but a big part of this is whether Jaden Daniels is going to play or not. So he's been dealing with a knee issue. He didn't practice on Thursday. We'll see what happens Friday. If he's active, you start him, but he might not be as mobile and run the ball as much as he usually does. If he doesn't play, Marcus Mariota is going to get the start at quarterback. And I think Mariota is decent enough to where you can start some of your Commanders still. I'm looking to start Deebo Samuel probably in either case as a wide receiver 2. Because even if Mariota plays, like Deebo he's playing close to the line of scrimmage, and I think Mariota can, get the ball to him. Deebo Samuel didn't practice on Thursday for personal reasons, so, if it seems like he should be good to go, but monitor that situation to see what's up, just in case he's doesn't play or whatever. And then Terry McLaurin, man, he started last year slow as well, so he's a good player. But he's to me like a low wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3 at this point. If Jaden Daniels doesn't play, I really don't know if you can start McLaurin unless you really don't have any other good options. The Raiders do give up the 7th most points to wide receivers, but McLaurin, he's a great player. He started slow last year. He's starting this year slow. He was holding out for a new deal, so maybe that factors into why he's starting a little bit slow here. But again, someone you can start, but I wouldn't look at him as like a must start. I'm starting Jacoby Myers over him probably in the same game on the other side of the field at wide receiver. His own teammate Deebo Samuel, I think at this point, is just a safer bet to get more targets closer to the line of scrimmage, be involved in the running game. We did see 9 targets for McLaurin last week. It only turned into 5 for 48. Tough matchup against the Packers. So again, I'm not saying you must sit him, but I'd play Odunze over him. I'd still play Garrett Wilson over him. Ted McMillan, both Buccaneers guys, I probably play over him. So not a must start, but you can start him. And like I said, Jacoby Myers at wide receiver for the Raiders, you can start him as a wide receiver 2. He's seeing a ton of volume. He saw 10 targets in week 1 and 12 in week 2, turned into 8 for 97 and 6 for 68. Very safe floor. And then I'm not starting Trey Tucker or Deontay Thornton, but in Dynasty, Thornton's pretty interesting. And then Brock Bowers at tight end. He's dealing with a knee issue. He played last week with a knee brace. Saw 8 targets, only turned into 5 for 38, whereas in week 1, he saw 8 targets and turned into 5 for 103. So you should play him if he's active. But his upside is probably a little bit limited as long as he's in that knee brace, just because, in the NFL, all the athletes are good and he's a outlier player. But if he is limited, that kind of evens the playing field a little bit, but he's still a really good player to where you can play him. And then The other tight end there for the Raiders on the other side, or for the, Commanders on the other side of the field, Zach Ertz. I think you can play him with or without Jaden Daniels. Week 1, 5 targets, 3 for 26 and a touchdown. Week 2, 8 targets, 6 for 64 and a touchdown. I think you can definitely start him against the Raiders. I guess the Raiders are giving up the 4th fewest points to tight ends. I mean, when you're only a couple weeks into the season, it's such a small sample size, especially for tight ends, because it really is dependent on who you play. Like, they played the Patriots with, I guess, Hunter Henry, who's a decent tight end. And what they limited him to. 4 for 66, I guess, which honestly isn't terrible. If Zach Ertz had 66 yards, I think he would take that. And then they played the Chargers, who even is their starting tight end? Is it Will Dissly? He had 1 for 7. I think that was it. So they have a game in there basically where the tight ends, didn't do anything. But long story short, you can start Zach Ertz. He's a nice streamer. Like, I have David Njoku. When I made that Josh Jacobs trade, I was gonna pick up Zach Ertz with that free roster spot, but someone picked him up before. But I would have played Ertz over Njoku. It's Will Dissly and Tyler Conklin. So basically nobody. That was rude. I'm sorry. That was rude. I'm sorry. And then in the running back room, Ashton Genty, I think you put him out there still. I know it hasn't been what you expected, but I think you still put him out there because he looks good. He was really close to making some big plays last week, and I think you still start him as like a low running back 1, high running back 2 type of guy. And then Bill Krosky Merritt, not forcing him in the lineup, but he's a, probably high running back 3, I would say. Like, I'd start Jalen Warren, Kyron Williams, Tony Pollard, Dobbins over him. But once you get past those names, he becomes interesting. Only 4 for 17 on the ground last week and 1 target, but they were getting kind of blown out by the Packers on the road. And then, Austin Eckler got hurt in that game. He's going to miss the season. So we're going to see what his role is here, if he really takes over as a true workhorse. Otherwise, you got, what was his name? Gonzalez and McNichols in that backfield. I'm interested to see their role as well. So definitely monitor that situation. You don't have to start Bill, but you can. And I think that's kind of it for that game, right? Yeah, covered that. Oh, Geno Smith, I'm at quarterback for the Raiders. I'm not looking to start him. I didn't even mention him at the top because I figured it wasn't necessary, but maybe if you're really, really, really desperate at quarterback in a 2-quarterback league, but Jake Browning, you might want to even start over Geno. I'd probably go Geno, but it's close. Moving on to the Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. 43.5 point over-under. The Falcons are 5.5 point road favorites. Not looking to start Penix or Young at quarterback. Michael Penix or Bryce Young. Again, maybe in a 2-quarterback league, but that's it. Bijan Robinson at running back for the Falcons. You always start him, but you start him even harder this week because the Panthers are a fantastic matchup for running backs. Going back to last year, their defense is really not good. I guess technically, they are 16th allowed to running backs. I know in week 1 they made ETN look like a beast, and James Conner got in the end zone, but he didn't look great against them. James Conner hasn't looked fantastic efficiency wise, at least so far this season. So I'm interested to see kind of what that's about. But for the Cardinals, but I think you attack the Panthers defense and you start Bijan no matter what. Chuba Hubbard, you start him. The Falcons defense has looked pretty good. They're allowing the 6 fewest points to running backs on the season. And Chuba Hubbard, he's been good, but he's had he's had 1 receiving touchdown each of the first 2 games, and it's kind of bailed him out a little bit. You're probably starting him. He's a running back 2, like a lower running back 2, but there are some teams where maybe, like, I'd probably start Javonte Williams over him, for example, which is kind of crazy to say, but for the Dallas Cowboys, but it's true. And then at wide receiver, Drake London, don't bench him. I know it hasn't been what you wanted, but Week 1, he saw 15 targets. It only turned to 8 for 55. But then in week 2, only 4 targets, 3 for 49 through the air. If you saw that game, though, they just didn't need to throw, like they could just run the ball every play. And maybe they'll do that again this week against the Panthers. But my Vikings just could not stop Robinson and Algier. So I wouldn't start Algier, but, he's a nice handcuff to Bijan Robinson. Maybe even a DFS play just because of the matchup. Maybe he gets in the end zone. But Darnell Mooney, not looking to start, but, he made his debut last week. And, he was interesting last year, so maybe he has a role this year. And then at tight end for the Falcons, Kyle Pitts is there. He's an option as a low tight end 1. I'd probably start him over like Hawkinson, probably over Njoku. I'd probably start him over Mark Andrews, but he with Mooney back, that makes it a little more murky. Last week with Mooney, he saw 5 targets, turned into 4 for 37. Granted, like, how much did Penix even throw the ball last week against the Vikings? He threw the ball 21 times, which is, for those who don't know, that is crazy, crazy low. So Pitts only had 5 targets, but that's almost a quarter of the targets, like, of the passes that were sent his way. So someone you can start. And then for the Panthers, I'm pretty much only starting Tet McMillan at wide receiver. That's pretty much it. I'm not starting Leggett or Renfro. Jatavian Sanders, tight end for the Panthers, is interesting to monitor. He saw 9 targets, turned into 7 for 54 through the air. Probably not putting him in the lineup at this point, but maybe stash him, or if he's on the waiver wire, maybe see how he performs this week, and maybe he's someone that you add moving forward. We're going to move on to the Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jags. This over-under is 43.5 points. The Jags are 1.5 point home favorites. I'm not starting CJ Stroud. I'm not looking to start Trevor Lawrence. He's more of a guy that you stream in the right matchup. And the Texans don't scream to me like, oh, this is a great matchup for quarterbacks. So Travis Etienne at running back, definitely someone I'm interested in starting as a running back 2. He has, he's looked good. The Texans give up the 10th most points to running backs on the season. And Bucky Irving and Rachaad White both had good games against the Texans last week. So, it's a small sample size again, but they didn't shut the run down last week. And who they play week 1? Texans. Okay, well, they play the Titans in week 1. And Pollard. Wait, is that true? No. Am I lying? Who they play week 1? I don't remember. They played the Rams. And it looks like Kyron was 18 for 66 and a touchdown. I think it's a good enough matchup where ETN is a solid running back to play. And then running back for the Texans, if I'm starting someone, it's probably Nick Chubb. He's the guy that you want to start right now. He's like a running back 3 type of guy. He's looked better than I thought he would. But, Woody Marks, the rookie, got involved. I believe Dameon Pierce didn't play or wasn't involved last week. So, let's see. I want to see last week. He was inactive last week. Dameon Pierce was. So, Nick Chubb is the guy you want right now, but moving forward, the rookie Woody Marks, if he makes his Woody Mark, maybe he gets more involved or even takes over the starting role. But if you're starting someone this week, it's Chubb. Nico Collins at wide receiver, you start him. It hasn't been really as good as you hoped, but he's still a guy that you start every week. And the Jacksonville Jaguars defense doesn't really scare me. They give it the 10th most points to receivers. That's the only receiver I'm starting for the Texans, though. I'm not starting Dalton Schultz at tight end. And then at wide receiver, oh my God, I almost just died. Wide receiver for Jacksonville, I'm still starting Brian Thomas Jr. I know it's been slow, but he's getting the targets. It's just not turning into anything. But I think you still start him. He was a limited participant on Thursday in practice with a wrist injury. Is this Tyreek Hill all over again? I hope not. But if you have him, you probably start him. And then Travis Hunter, not looking to start him. 8 and 6 targets through a couple weeks here, but only turned into 6 for 33 in week 1 and 3 for 22 in week 2. So, still hold on to him, but I don't cut him, but I would not play him at this point. And then Brenton Strange is a streaming option. I know it didn't really amount to much last week. Only 3 for 17 on 5 targets, but he's going to be in the streaming category at times, but probably not looking to stream him. I think there's better streaming options this week than Strange. But moving on, we got the Denver Broncos on the road against the LA Chargers. The Chargers look really good. They're 2.5 point home favorites over the Broncos, 46.5 point over under. Justin Herbert at this point, I mean, he's basically an every week start. They're throwing the ball like a ton, like even like when you look at compared to like expectation, like they're airing it out. They're letting Justin Herbert cook. Like Herbert's a quarterback 1, like mid quarterback 1. Bo Nix is a low quarterback 1, high quarterback 2. On the road against a good Chargers defense, but I think this game could be higher scoring than you might think. I mean, the over under is decent with 46.5 points, but Omarion Hampton at running back, the rookie, it's been a struggle. I'm not really looking to start him. Like he's still in that, maybe low running back 2, high running back 3 range. But if you have other options, you can definitely like just go away from him. Especially because the Broncos have a solid defense. Like I would probably start Pollard, Kyron Williams, Jalen Warren. Again, Javonte Williams over Hampton. J.K. Dobbins is someone you can start. You can put him out there. He's kind of the main guy for the Broncos right now. And it is a revenge game. So he's a low run. He's kind of in the same range as Hampton, honestly. And I feel like I'd probably rather start Dobbins. Like he's at least put up good games. Like, 16 for 63 and a touchdown, 2 for 5 through the air in week 1. And then week 2, 14 for 76 and a touchdown, 1 for 9 through the air in week 2 there for Dobbins. So at receiver, Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, and Quentin Johnston are all options for the Chargers. Ladd McConkey is still probably my favorite, even though it hasn't been great for fantasy. Like 6 for 74 and 5 for 48 in his first 2 weeks. There's other guys there. Like, I kind of didn't think he would outproduce what he did as a rookie just because, I guess they only brought in Keenan Allen and they drafted Hampton. But at a certain point, it just seemed like McConkey was the only guy they could throw to last year. And now there are other options there, but you can still start him as a wide receiver 2. And then you have Keenan Allen. He's interesting. Like he's a wide receiver 3 flex type of guy, but he's been really good. Like 7 for 68 and a touchdown in week 1, 5 for 61 and a touchdown in week 2. I saw 10 and 7 targets in those games respectively. So he's going to be involved. Like, and if he gets in the end zone, like you're going to be happy. Like I think I'm starting him in a league with a couple flexes. So he's someone that's entering that category of like, startable. And then Quentin Johnston is probably my least favorite of the 3, even though he's been awesome. He's seen 7 targets each of the first 2 weeks. Week 1, it was 5 for 79 and 2 touchdowns. Week 2, it was 3 for 71 and a touchdown. He's hit on the big plays. He's going to need a big play to probably be really good for fantasy with those other options there. But, you can throw him out there, especially if you're an underdog. Like, put him in your lineup as a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, because he's got upside. And then at wide receiver for the Broncos, Cortland Sutton is the guy you want, but the Chargers do have a good defense. The Chargers give up the 26th most points to receivers, which means they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7th fewest is another way of saying that. And the Broncos give up the 4th fewest. So, what's going to bend? Is it, both of these offenses are pretty good and both of the defenses are good. So is it going to be a slugfest, or is it going to, usually offense prevails. And since both offenses are pretty good, we might see that prevail there. But Cortland Sutton is like a low wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3. Last week was disappointing, only 1 for 6 on 4 targets. Troy Franklin really stole the show. And that's another guy that, I don't really want to put Troy Franklin in the lineup yet. I kind of want to see how he's utilized this week. But last week, he saw 83% of the snaps, saw 9 targets, 8 for 89 and a touchdown. Also added a carry for 11 yards. But, we could definitely see that go away and see Sean Payton use a different wide receiver in that wide receiver 2 role even more. So I'm more so looking to stash him and see how he's used. But, in a deep league or DFS, you can throw him out there. And yeah, at tight end, I don't really want to start Evan Ingram. Is he playing? Yeah, he's been dealing with an injury, and he played 34 and 43% of the snaps for the first couple weeks. 3 for 21 on 4 targets in week 1 and 1 for 12 on 2 targets in week 2. So definitely put him on the bench this week and wait until you see something. If you need to cut him, you can, but I do think it'll get better once he's, over his injury. But it's possible that maybe he's just not going to be involved. So yeah, kind of a bummer. But next game, we got the New Orleans Saints on the road against the Seattle Seahawks here. Let's see. Looks like the Seahawks are 7.5 point home favorites, 41.5 point over under. Not starting Darnold or Rattler at quarterback, but in the running back room, I like Alvin Kamara and I like Ken Walker. Alvin Kamara is a good start as a running back 2. Between Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, like Charbonnet was the guy week 1. And then Kenneth Walker was the guy in week 2. I would prefer to start Kenneth Walker in that running back 2 range in week 3 here. Zach Charbonnet, I know I saw him with a questionable tag at one point. I don't know if I'm not seeing, is he dealing with an injury? Yeah, he's questionable right now. I'm not seeing his, what the heck? Zach Charbonnet injury. He's dealing with something, a foot injury. Okay, so monitor that. I mean, hopefully, if he plays, then it's still going to be a split. If he doesn't play, Walker becomes an even better play. But yeah, you can definitely start Kenneth Walker or Kamara. The Seahawks are giving up the 7th most points to running backs, and the Saints are giving up the 13th most points to running backs. So both are guys you play. And then in the receiving game, JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba for the Seahawks is a must start. Like he could be the greatest steal in the draft. Wide receiver 1, you start him no matter what. And then for the Saints, I mean, you can start. I mean, the Seahawks are giving up the fewest points to receivers in the league. So I'm not by any means saying you have to start Olave. You can, just based on volume, start him as like a wide receiver 3. He's seen 13 and 10 targets each of the first 2 weeks, turned into 7 for 54 and 6 for 54 in weeks 1 and 2. It's more of a PPR play. I don't see him having a big game, but you can put him out there. Cooper Kupp, I'm not looking to start for the Seahawks at receiver. Week 1 was dreadful, but week 2, he saw 9 targets and it turned into 7 for 90. So you do like to see signs of life there. Not looking to put him in the lineup yet, but if he has another good week, then that's someone maybe moving forward you start to consider. And then at tight end, I love Juwan Johnson this week for the Saints. I talked about him in my start of the week section, but he's a tight end 1. He's like a mid to low tight end 1. I'd start him and Jake Ferguson over Hawkinson, over Pitts, over Njoku, over Andrews, over Henry. So that's kind of where they're at. And then we got the Bears hosting the Cowboys. I talked about this game a ton already, but 50.5 point over under. The Cowboys are 1.5 point road favorites. So I think you could start Caleb Williams. I know I talked about Dak as like a borderline must start, like mid quarterback 1 if you don't have like Lamar or Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts. And even between him and Hurts, it's close. I'd probably go Hurts, but Dak is close. Caleb Williams is a little behind Dak to me, but I still like him as like a low quarterback 1, low to mid. Just because I think this is going to be a high scoring game and neither defense is good. DeAndre Swift at a running back for the Bears. You can start him as a running back 2. He's limited with a quad on Thursday, so monitor what his situation is on Friday. But it seems more likely than not that he will play. So he's probably going to play. And then Javonte Williams is a really good start. The Cowboys are missing their center, which hurts, but against the Bears, I don't know if it really matters that much. He's a borderline running back 1. I think to me, he's like a high running back 2. But, you know, after this week, if you want to sell high on him, you can, just with the offensive line, with the center being gone for, I think, 6 weeks it is, with some tough matchups coming up. But there's also some good matchups in there, and he's the clear lead back there for the Cowboys. So I think he's going to be someone that you could sell high on, but you look back at the trade and you might think like, oh, wow, Javonte was actually just good all year. CeeDee Lamb, obviously, you start for the Cowboys at receiver. George Pickens, you also can start him at receiver. He's in that wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3 range. If you don't have anyone exciting to play over him, I'd go with Pickens just because he's a big play guy with upside. So I'm always going to lean towards that guy versus someone with a more safe floor. Unless I'm I'm a heavy favorite and I just need to lock in the win. But, you know, Pickens is a great play this week. Week 1 was rough. Everything was rough for the Cowboys in week 1 other than Javonte falling in the end zone twice. But week 2 against the Giants, Pickens was 5 for 68 and a touchdown on 9 targets. So start him against the Bears. And then Odunze is the receiver, my receiver of choice for the Bears. He's been great. He's a wide receiver 4 right now in all of fantasy. So start him in this great matchup. And then DJ Moore, the other kind of forgotten Bears receiver. You know, Odunze is kind of taking his spot as a wide receiver 1. You know, he's seen 5 and 6 targets, only turned into 3 for 68 and 5 for 46. You can start him as a wide receiver 3. But it's not as exciting as you would hope. But I think a big game is coming for him here. And if you don't have a good option, I think this game is exciting enough where we could see him make a big play. And then I talked about him earlier, but Jake Ferguson is a great low to mid tight end 1 start here with his usage and with how exciting this game could be scoring wise. Moving on, we got the 49ers hosting the Cardinals, 45.5 point over under. The 49ers are 3-point home favorites. It's looking like Mac Jones is probably going to start again for the 49ers. Maybe like a DFS deep 2 quarterback play for Mac himself, but not looking to start him, even though he did look really good in week 1 against the Saints. And then Kyler Murray, he's really frustrating for fantasy, but you still have to put him in, you know, consideration as a low quarterback 1, high quarterback 2. Christian McCaffrey, running back for the 49ers, you obviously play him. It's a smash play. Don't think the Cardinals are going to be able to stop him. James Conner on the other side of the field at running back for the Cardinals. He's been weird. He's been good for fantasy, but he has not been efficient. And luckily he had a receiving touchdown in week 1 and he had a rushing touchdown in week 2, but 12 for 39 and 11 for 34 on the ground each of the first couple weeks. And then in the receiving game, week 1, 4 targets turned into 4 receptions for 5 yards. Luckily, he had that touchdown in week 1. And then in week 2, 1 for 18 on 1 target. So I think you can put him out there. But it's, you know, I'd start ETN over him. I'd start Javonte over him. Jordan Mason. Still start Genty over him. Kenneth Walker. Him and Pollard are close. Kyron, you can very close. So that's kind of the range. Marvin Harrison Jr., you can start him as a wide receiver, like a low wide receiver 2. He's always got upside, but yeah, like he hasn't really fulfilled his potential yet. So if you don't have a really good option, put him in the lineup just in case he has a big game. But yeah, I'd start Tet McMillan over him. That's kind of my example, the rookie. I love Tet. That's the only receiver I'm starting for the Cardinals. And then obviously Trey McBride at tight end is a must start. With Kittle out and Brock Bowers kind of banged up, McBride is pretty much the clear tight end 1 at this point, other than maybe Tyler Warren and Tucker Kraft. You know, those guys kind of rising up. And then at receiver for the 49ers, obviously, you know, no George Kittle, which is not great. So I think that means more targets potentially for Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall. Juwan Jennings, let's see, he had 10 targets turned into 5 for 89 and a touchdown. He is listed as questionable. I don't know why this website isn't showing their injuries right now. Why? What is wrong with this website? What's his injury, bro? I forget. I when I'm reading something out loud, I forget. Well, he's questionable. So if he plays, you can play him as like a wide receiver 3. But if not, then you don't play him. But Ricky Pearsall is also a good start here. Kind of in a similar range. He was 4 for 56 last week on 6 targets. So you can start either of those guys as wide receiver 3s. You know, and then moving on to the next game here, we got Kansas City Chiefs on the road against the New York Giants. I think the Chiefs win, but I think this game could be closer than you might think. 45.5 point over under. The Chiefs are 6-point road favorites. Mahomes is a good start. He's actually been pretty good for fantasy this year. I know it's been kind of rough the last year or two for him for fantasy, but you can start him as a quarterback 1. Not really wanting to start any of these running backs. Like Pacheco has been bad, inefficient. You probably have better options. And then on the other side, I think Cam Scataba was kind of the one you want. He was 11 for 45 and a touchdown last week. 2 for 14 through the air on 3 targets, but I'm not looking to start him against the Chiefs. But definitely hold on to him, but not someone that I want to put in the lineup against a tough Chiefs defense. Malik Neighbors at receiver, you start for the Giants as a must-start wide receiver 1. Wan'Dale Robinson, you probably, he was probably picked up in your league after a big week 2 against the Cowboys. The Chiefs defense is a whole nother ball game. I did bench Justin Herbert in week 1 against the Chiefs, and I regretted that. So, the Chiefs defense, any defense can get exploited, but Wan'Dale Robinson is not good enough to where I am forcing him in the lineup. He was limited on Thursday with a foot injury. He's a wide receiver 4. I'd start like Pittman, Pearsall, Jennings, like I just talked about, Devontae Smith, Olave over Robinson. And then I don't really want to start Hollywood Brown for the Chiefs. Xavier Worthy, he was limited at practice on Thursday. So we'll see if he plays, man. Like if he plays, he's someone you can put out there. You don't have to if you have good options, but we'll kind of monitor that situation, but not a must start if he plays, but he was drafted to be good, and if he plays and is not limited, he's worthy, get it, of being played. And then I'm not really looking to start Hollywood Brown if I can help it. Travis Kelce at tight end, you could put him out there as just with the Chiefs missing those receiving options. He was 4 for 61 last week on 6 targets, so could do worse. He's in that tight end 1 range because tight end is gross. And then moving on to the last game of the week here, we got the Detroit Lions on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. This is the most exciting game of the week, in my opinion, other than maybe the Cowboys and the Bears. Forgot the name, but that's just because I have I have some Cowboys and Bears on my teams. But this game has the highest over/under of the week with 53.5 points, 4.5 point favorites. The Ravens are. I don't know why I said it like that. At home against the Lions, but this game is going to be awesome. Hopefully, a lot of times when you have these high over/unders, it kind of disappoints. But Lamar Jackson must start, probably the best start of the week at quarterback. And then Jared Goff at quarterback, you can start him as like a high quarterback 2 in that range. He had a bad week 1 on the road against the Packers, but then in week 2 at home against the Bears, the defense that I've been saying to target, they gave up like 52 points or whatever it was. Wasn't it 52? Yeah, 21-52 was the score of the Lions-Bears game. He had 5 passing touchdowns, 23 of 28, 334 yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks. I'm not expecting that again, but in a game that's going to be high scoring, most likely, you can start him again. There was this kind of thing where people thought Jared Goff would always be good at home in a dome, in the right matchup, but he's kind of gone away from that trend. So in DFS, he might not be as popular as he should be. Granted, this is a Monday night game, so it's not going to be part of the main slate. But you could start Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Derrick Henry at running back. You start them for the Lions and the Ravens as must starts. I know, Henry was really bad last week against the Browns, but you still go back to him. David Montgomery, I don't expect him to have a huge yardage game. You're really hoping that he kind of falls in the end zone, which, if this game is high scoring as we think it might be, then he could have a goal line opportunity or two. Week 1, he was 11 for 25 on the ground, 4 for 18 through the air. And then week 2, 11 for 57 and got the touchdown, and then 1 for 4 through the air. So you need the touchdown. I'd still probably go like Hampton over him, but that's close. He's kind of in that range. Like Jaylen Warren is probably safer than Montgomery. But yeah, I don't know. He's a tough call. The Ravens are giving up the 8th most points to running backs on the season. So, maybe it's a better matchup than we think here. And the Ravens have played the Bills, where James Cook had a good game, and then the Browns, where Judkins in his first game after no offseason came in and averaged like 6 a carry. So, maybe Montgomery's a better play than I'm leading on. So you can start him as a low running back 2, high running back 3. Somebody can flex in there. And remember, put your late game guys in the flex. Put your early games in the running back and wide receiver spot, so you have that flexibility later in the week in case, something happens. Like if Montgomery's in your running back spot and Sunday passes and Monday comes along and, now Montgomery's out, well, then you can only replace him with a running back. Whereas if he's in your flex, you can replace him with a running back or a receiver or a tight end or whatever. And then at wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions. You start him. Zay Flowers has been on a tear. He's actually like a wide receiver 1 this week for me. Must start. And then Jameson Williams. He's been weird. Week 1 was really bad. The whole team was bad against the Packers. And then week 2, the team bounced back. They put up 52 points. And he had a good game, but it came on 2 receptions on 4 targets for 108 and a touchdown. So he had the big play. I think you still start him in this game if you have him, just because of the upside. But if it's a high scoring game with his big playability, I think you start him. But if he has a bad week this week, it might be time to worry. But he's kind of one of those guys that's going to be up and down anyways. So, and then Sam Laporta, good start. Tight end 1 start. If you have him, you're starting him. Mark Andrews, I'm not looking to start him. It wouldn't surprise me if, now that we're all kind of out on Andrews, if this is the week where he gets in the end zone. I think he almost had a touchdown last week against Cleveland, but week 1, he saw 1 target, turned into 1 for 5. And then week 2, saw 3 targets, turned into 1 for 2. And he had a rush for 2 yards. I don't know if that was a backwards pass or what that was, but 7 receiving yards on the season. So not looking to start him, but honestly, if you don't have a really good option or any of the streaming guys I mentioned, like I'd start him over like Brenton Strange, Jonnu Smith, Jatavian Sanders, Evan Ingram. But if you have a guy that's better than that, you can go with Andrews. And then Isaiah Likely is a guy to monitor. If he's back, that kind of dings Andrews even more. I wouldn't start Likely, probably. I likely wouldn't start him. But if he's out there, you could stash him. And with Andrews not showing much, it's possible we see Likely kind of be the lead tight end this year. I know we kind of said the same thing last year, and then Andrews kind of went on a touchdown tear, but we'll see how that plays out. So, all right, guys, we did it. I think we yapped a little bit less this episode, and I got the podcast length down about 10 or so minutes here from last week, so that's pretty solid. But thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. Remember to subscribe or follow wherever you are enjoying the podcast, and then don't forget to, let's see, don't forget to follow me on TikTok. It's The Fantasy Football Prodigy, like The Fantasy Football Prodigy, but instead of the, it's DA. So The Fantasy Football Prodigy is my username. Check me out. Like, subscribe, follow. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. And yeah, make sure you stay on the journey so that you can become a fantasy football prodigy with us. Good luck to everyone except our opponents in week 3, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.